Hey everyone, my name is Reggie and welcome to my channel. Today I'm really excited to be sharing with you my favorite series of all time. But before we get into this list, you should subscribe to my channel if you haven't already because I post new bookish videos every week. Also hit that bell notification to be notified when I post new videos. Coming in at number 10 on this list is Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard trilogy. The first book in the series is called Sword of Summer, the second is Hammer of Thor, and the third is The Ship of the Dead. So this is a middle grade trilogy by Rick Riordan, who is the author of the Percy Jackson series, Heroes of Olympus, The Kane Chronicles, and more. I've read almost all of his series, and these books of his are by far my favorite. The characters are definitely my favorites that Rick has written, and this is just like peak diversity for Rick. So we have a practicing Muslim, an arranged marriage couple, we have a displaced main character, we talk about poverty. In the beginning, there is a deaf or hard of hearing character. There's so many cool things going on here, and I just love how it all wrapped up. Coming in at number 9 on my list is The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. So the books in this series are the first one, Cinder, which is a fairy tale retelling of Cinderella. Next up we have Scarlet, which is a fairy tale retelling of Little Red Riding Hood. Third up is Cress, and Cress is a retelling of Rapunzel. Last up we have Winter, and Winter is the retelling of Snow White. There's also 2 novellas in the series, a prequel novella following Queen Lavanna, who is our villain of the story. And then Stars Above is a bind-up of, I think, 4 novellas. And last up, there was a graphic novel duology that was published. And so these are called Wire and Nerves. There's 2 volumes, and they follow our android friend, Aiko, who you meet in the Lunar Chronicles series. The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer is a sci-fi fairy tale retelling series that is done in such a unique and beautiful way. So essentially, in the main core of the story are 4 books. Each one follows one main character who is a fairy tale retelling. But the story continues throughout. It's one continuous story. I love the characters in Marissa Meyer's books so much. They aren't necessarily like the deepest characters I've ever seen, but no matter what she does, I always fall for her characters and become so attached to them. Alright, next up on this list we have number 8 is The Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater. The first book is The Raven Boys. The second book is The Dream Thieves. The third book is Blue Lily, Lily Blue, and the fourth book is The Raven King. These books are some of the hardest to describe, but I'm gonna do my best for you and tell you that these books follow our main character, Blue Sergeant, who is not a clairvoyant, but lives in a family of clairvoyants. Everyone in her all-women's household is basically a clairvoyant besides her, but she is an amplifier, so she can help accentuate their powers, make their powers more extreme. She has been told, it has been foreseen, if she kisses her one true love, that person will die. So she has avoided a lot of friendships and, more importantly, romantic relationships. She's stuck pretty firm to this no boys, no relationships thing until she gets tangled up with the Raven Boys, a group of 4 friends who go to a private school near her and are searching for a Welsh king through a magical ley lines. And it is so good. The books are so atmospheric. The writing style is incredible, but what really sells you on these books are the characters. They are incredible, so complex, so well written, and just some of the best characters and character development ever of all time. I love all of the characters so much. I highly implore you to pick these books up if you haven't already because they're just that good. I love them so much. Is The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. I absolutely adore these books. The first book in the series is The Darkest Minds. Then we have Never Fade. Third, we have In the Afterlife. And yes, those titles intentionally make a sentence. Then we have a bind-up of novellas that is Through the Night, and I think they are so, so good. It's such a strong dystopian story because the narrative is a little bit different than a lot that I've seen before. This story follows a world in which a disease has ravaged children, only children, not adults. And basically, most of the children have died. However, those that have survived have inherited these powers. So there are things that are really benign, like the ability to solve a puzzle really fast or move things with your mind, or there's powers that are a little more extreme, like controlling electricity, reading minds, and creating fire. Because the adults and the government have become so afraid of these teenagers who have these superpowers, they've rounded them up and are essentially putting them in concentration camps. So this is a very dark series to start out with, but the characters are so wonderful and so just genuine, and they're like squad goals to the extreme. They're my favorite group of friends in any book series. Coming in at number 6 on this list is The Diviners by Libba Bray. The Diviners by Libba Bray is an incredible story. This is a paranormal historical fiction set in 1920s New York City. It, in the beginning, follows our main character, Evie O'Neill, who comes from the Midwest, Ohio, in fact, to New York City after a kind of spooky, supernaturally incident occurs, and she is punished by being sent to New York City to help her uncle who works in an occult museum. During her time in New York City, her uncle and her get wrapped up in trying to solve a ghost murder mystery. It's so cool and so much fun, and the characters in this book are so diverse, and the stories continue to get darker, deeper, and way more wild than I could have anticipated. But this first book is so good. She is a super atmospheric writer, and I love that. Her characters are so interesting, but also her characters are so diverse. And that becomes more of a point in the story as the series progresses. I really love these books. I should really stop saying that because every book on this list I love, since they're my favorites of all time. I only own the first one of this series because they keep changing the covers, which drives me wild. But the first book is The Diviners, the second book is Lair of Dreams, and the third book is Before the Devil Breaks You. The Diviners series by Libba Bray is still being written. I think it has 4 or 5 books slated in the series, so we're getting there, but it is still being published. These books are also some of the most incredible audiobooks ever, narrated by my favorite audiobook narrator, January Lavoie. Love her. Love these books. Coming in at number 5, we have The Themis Files by Sylvia Neuville. The Themis Files starts with sleeping giants, continues on to waking gods, and is concluded by Only Human. These books are such an adventure. Basically, we follow our main character who, as a child, fell into a hole and discovered this big, giant metal hand. And basically, this giant metal hand grows to be a giant thing, and they're trying to figure out what it is. As she grows up and goes to school, she becomes a kind of big deal science person. And through this is actually one of the lead people trying to figure out what these things are. The series is basically told in transcripts. So it's dialogue conversations between a guy who's kind of interviewing people and the people who are kind of recalling events that happened. Or we'll find transcripts of news reports, things like that. So it's told in a very like non-traditional sense, and because of that it makes for the best audiobooks. In fact, I think these books are better consumed as audiobooks. Now this is where it gets really hard to narrow down my favorites, to decide which next come. Like number 1 was easy, but like 2 through 4 really hard. So coming in at number 4, we have the Fire and Thorn series by Rae Carson. Rae Carson is one of my all-time favorite authors. The first book in the series is The Girl of Fire and Thorns. The second is The Crown of Embers, which is one of my favorite books of all time. And the third is The Bitter Kingdom. This is a high fantasy series that follows our main character, Alyssa, who is an overweight protagonist, princess of her kingdom, and also bearer of the Godstone, which in this world means basically she is destined and decided by God to do something great within her lifetime. No idea what that is. And she is kind of going through the most intense imposter syndrome. She doesn't know why God would select her. She's having some like religious strife. She's just kind of coming to terms with what her religion means and how she feels about it, and how she feels that she's been selected to do some greatness. Her story begins as she is being married off for political advantage to another kingdom, and she basically goes on a physical and metaphorical journey throughout the first book. Of course, the second and third books take a little bit different of a turn and develop the world a little bit more. My favorite antagonist slash villain is in this book. I think these books are so great. One of my favorite antagonists, my favorite all-time OTP, oh my goodness, my OTP is in this book. one of my favorite characters that's a male, and just definitely my favorite relationship I've ever read in a book, but I can't tell it to you because it's a hardcore spoiler, is going to be going to Samantha Shannon's The Bone Season. The first book in the series is The Bone Season, the second is The Mime Order, and the third is The Song Rising. So this high fantasy world mostly takes place in London in the first book, and we follow our main character, Paige Mahoney, who is a clairvoyant. However, clairvoyancy in this world is outlawed, so her just existence is kind of illegal. As you can imagine, this is a social commentary of sorts. So we're following Paige Mahoney in the beginning of this book as she is working the London Underground as an illegal clairvoyant until she is kidnapped. The story picks up after she is kidnapped and the world kind of opens up from there. These books are books that found me at the right point in my life. I read them right when I graduated college. I wasn't finding books about people my age. They were all like people who were getting divorced, adults like doing their life, or like kids like falling in love for the first time. And I love all of those stories, but this was the first one that was like, oh, this girl's like almost a 20-something. I think Paige is 19 when the books start. She's trying to figure out her life and what it means and what she wants to do. Oh, I relate to that hardcore. Samantha Shannon's writing style is so great. It evolves throughout the series and it grows and it changes, and I just really love her as a person. There are some things that I don't necessarily love about the series. The relationship in particular I think is a little damaging, and maybe I'm putting on the rose-tinted glasses, but I just hope and think that maybe that relationship is not endgame and Samantha Shannon is trolling us. Putting number 2 on this list as the Beartown duology by Frederick Bachman. First book is Beartown. Second book is Us Against You. I have a kind of series review. Mostly it's a review of Us Against You, but I talk a lot about why I love Beartown as well in that video, so I'll link it in the eye down below, all of that fun stuff. So these books follow a hockey town, Beartown, which is in Sweden, and it follows the whole town, many characters. We get many perspectives in these books. We get a lot of themes and discussions about things that happened in sports communities, things that happen with guys, things that happen with small towns. There's a lot of discussion here, but the main thing, in my opinion, that happens in the first book is the discussion of rape and victim blaming and how that plays out when the person who is accused of raping someone is a star of a sports team, and a beloved sports team at that. It's a really under a microscope look at victim blaming and sports and just the microaggressions that come along with this, and I loved it so much. The sequel deals with the fallout of that, continues all those stories forward, but also more heavily deals with LGBTQ+ rights, the outing of a closeted gay person, and how that person deals with it, and how that person's role in sports shifts, changes, adapts because of everything that happens. These books are like incredibly good. They're so smart. The writing is incredible. If you read any book I ever recommend to you, it's gotta be Beartown. But be warned, these books are very triggering, as you can imagine. Huge trigger warnings for violence, gun use, suicidal idealization, and mentions of suicide, death, grieving, and of course, huge trigger warning for rape and victim blaming. So if any of those things are very triggering to you, pass. Otherwise, if you can handle that kind of content, please read these books. They're so, so good. All right, it's time for number 1 on this list. And if you know me, or even if you don't, if you just have seen my shelf and have been like, there's a big series missing, you knew Harry Potter was gonna be at number 1. And the first book in the series is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, followed by Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. And that's all the books in the series. We're not going to talk about any more. Harry Potter is iconic. Harry Potter is perfect. Harry Potter changed my life. I've made a lot of videos about Harry Potter. I'm not going to go into it, but of course it was number 1 on this list. I've made a lot of videos on Harry Potter, but I do have a playlist with all of those videos in it, so I'll link it down below if you're interested on hearing more of my thoughts on Harry Potter. But basically, it's just totally awesome. I'm a fan. So that is all for my favorite series of all time list. I'm really excited to finally be getting this video out to you, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and comment down below, let me know what your favorite series of all time is. And stay tuned, because very shortly after this video, I will be posting my favorite standalones of all time. So get excited for that. I'll see you in my next video. Bye!